what's the first thing? Okay, so I'm coming in off the street. You don't know me, and I say, look, I've got a marathon coming up. I'm fairly new to this. What's the first thing you do?
First thing we'll do is we'll do just a quick analysis of their feet, take a look at their biomechanics, strength, weakness, get them to do a walk just to have a look at their gait. Ideally, if they bring in an old pair of shoes, we can look at the wear pattern of them and find out if they've had any aches, issues, injuries, and kind of go from there. So the more that we can ask them questions and get them involved, the more that we can find out about them and find the proper fit based on what they need.
Cool. Now you mentioned two words that kind of stuck out for me. One is gait. A lot of people might not know what the word gait means. We're not talking about G-A-T-E, right? We're not talking about the gate you have at your house. No. But we're talking about G-A-I-T. So do you want to maybe expand on a little bit? You don't have to get super scientific, but what does that exactly mean?
Well, gait would be the running form that the runner is what would you say? Their running form. So you're always trying to achieve that ideal running form, whether it's landing midfoot, making sure that you're really picking up your feet, picking up your knees, and trying to achieve a very efficient running stride, running form.
Cool. So basically, kind of like their technique or the way they their body's aligned, or the way they stand on their feet, the way they run on their feet.
Yeah.
Is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing you mentioned, which I found really interesting, is you said if they bring in an old pair of shoes, you can look and see the wear patterns on their shoes. So maybe explain a little bit about that and tell us a little bit about what the wear patterns, what different wear patterns on shoes can tell us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so most often for the average runner, you're going to see a lot more wear on the outside heel. Quite often they're a heel striker. Even the shoe brands will reinforce the heel for a little bit more durability. And then you want to see kind of where their wear is through the shoe. What's that going to do is indicate where the pressure is, where their foot is falling through the shoe as they're running. So, what you're trying to avoid is excess wear on that medial side, on that arch side, meaning maybe they could be lined up a little bit better for a bit more efficient form. Also, other than looking at their outer sole, you can see how much compression there is in the midsole, if the shoe's completely fatigued or not. You can also pull out the sock liner too, which is really beneficial to have a look at it. Yeah, you can have a look at the sock liner, and it'll show you where a lot of the pressure is as well.
Okay, so I've come in, you've made me walk around the store, or maybe jog, you've checked out my gait, you've maybe looked at my shoe to find the old wear patterns.
Yep.
Now what?
Yep.
Obviously I'm looking around this store here, and there's like 100, maybe 200 different pairs of shoes.
Right. Right.
And so now what? What's the next step?
Well, once somebody gets an idea of how much support you need, then you're going to be finding yourself in a certain support type of shoe, whether it's a neutral shoe, meaning, with a neutral shoe, there's no correction involved in the shoe. Typically, you're lined up pretty well. Most people, not all people, but they overpronate or they collapse in a little bit. So with an overpronator, you kind of want to get something with a little bit of anti-pronation, so keep that foot from dropping in. Yeah. So once you find out your needs for your feet, then you can kind of find out the category you're in and start narrowing it down by support. And then some shoes are built really high in the arch, some shoes are built really low in the arch. So just trying a few shoes on that based on your needs, and you'll kind of dial it in. Yeah.
Cool. So I'm assuming now, brand also comes into it. There's dozens of brands now. There's ASICS, there's New Balance, there's Nike, there's Adidas, there's even some sort of not so mainstream shoe companies like the Hoka brand that are coming out. So can you tell right away if somebody's going to work better for a certain brand, or do all the shoe brands now offer basically that whole line of shoes, from neutral shoes to supportive shoes?
Well, certain brands are definitely going to have, not all, but more distinct fits. Adidas, some people find a little bit higher in the arch, a little bit narrower in the midfoot. Same with Mizuno. New Balance has typically a little bit of a lower arch. So some brands will have certain fits. And as well, some people want a really responsive feeling shoe, something a little bit thinner of a midsole, a little bit quicker feeling. Other people want a really soft, plush, more cushioned shoe. So once you find out your support, you can find out if you want a really nice, well-cushioned feeling shoe, or if you want something a little bit lighter and quicker feeling. So yeah, there's definitely different feels for different shoes.
So that's good. So then I guess, you get the person to try on the shoes, they walk around, you make sure the sizing's right. How do you actually size a shoe? I mean, if they bring in an old shoe, that's the first clue, but is there ways to size a shoe?
There is.
Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah. While Dan's over there getting the device to size shoes, I'm going to fill time. Oh, he's back.
I'm back already. So
okay.
This is a Brannock device, and what we want to do is, we get their foot in there, make sure that their heel's right back, and find a good size for them. Typically one foot's a little bit larger than the other, so you always want to accommodate for the larger foot. And the Brannock device is definitely a key tool to finding out the size and the width as well. You can see you have your little width gauge right through here, which is definitely handy.
Cool, and width is a good thing. That's, I don't want to say a fairly new thing, but I remember years ago, I don't think shoes came in widths, but now they do, right?
That's right.
A lot of the companies come in different widths, because certainly people have wider feet or narrower feet, and so.
New Balance kind of was definitely known for their width story a while back. I feel like a lot of brands are kind of caught up with that as well. Some brands do their width differently. Some brands will only add a little bit more upper, whereas other brands will add a broader platform, so a wider outer sole, wider midsole, and the wider upper, so you get a bit of a truer wrap if you're a wide. Same goes for if you're narrow. So if you need a narrow shoe, some brands like Asics and Mizuno, you can get a really good narrow fit because narrowing up the upper, the midsole, the outer sole, everything. So definitely a lot of width options nowadays.
There's another part of shoe, I don't want to call it technology, but sort of a direction that shoes are going in. And one thing a lot of people are talking about now is the difference in height between the heel and the forefoot. Yeah. I think a lot of people will have read an article or heard something, or seen a product that deals with minimalist running, barefoot running. Born to Run was a book that came out that a lot of people have read that talks a lot about going back to our roots of running.
Yeah.
And typically shoes can sometimes be what people call overbuilt if you're a pure natural barefoot runner. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that, because even being in your store today, I see a lot more products on the shelf that are mimicking barefoot running, or that, as I say, that drop from heel to toe is pretty small.
Yeah.
I know race flats, for example, typically the smaller shoes, they've always been like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because they're a smaller, lighter shoe with less cushioning. But maybe you can just talk a little bit about that. I don't want to call it a movement, but in a way it kind of is a movement.
There's definitely more of a minimalist movement going on right now. In regards to stack height or the heel height, for sure you're seeing, the conventional running shoes, you're going to see about an 11 to 12 millimeter height difference from heel to midfoot. So the heels have almost become overbuilt in the last while. What they've done, in the last year or two, is they're either dropping the heel a little bit, or they're actually adding more thickness in the midsole to the forefoot, having a little bit less of that stack height difference. It's going to help you land a little bit more midfoot and help encourage a little bit more of an efficient stride.
Yeah. So there's another thing you brought up. You say midfoot. I think anybody who started running 30 years ago, 20 years ago even, common knowledge was that you were a heel striker, and I think that's why shoes were built up so much in the heel.
That's right.
And now, of course, we're getting back to midfoot landing. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that relates to what these other shoes are trying to do?
Well, once you can build up a more efficient stride, then you need a lot less of that midsole in the heel. Having a high density carbon heel is definitely going to weigh down a little bit, so you're definitely going to have a lighter, more responsive shoe. And as well, you can see a typical conventional shoe is how carved away it is. The shoe is actually a few years old, so the modern one is a little bit better, a little bit more up to date, but how carved away it is through the midfoot, so you definitely lose a lot of torsional integrity. With more of the newer minimal shoes, they're filling them in a lot more, so you get a little bit more integrity for that midfoot strike, that midfoot land.
There's a couple other shoes you got down there I'd like you to pull up, because there really are, there's a few companies going this route of very minimalist shoes. And so maybe just explain what these are all about.
Yeah, okay. So this is the Vibram 5 Fingers, definitely taken off, especially since the Born to Run book kind of got launched and the minimalist movement. The whole idea with a minimal shoe is to strengthen yourself, strengthen your own muscles, and kind of, allow for a more efficient stride. We typically recommend the more of the strength training tools as opposed to find a new pair, doing your normal 10K run, because that's going to be pretty hard to, if you've been wearing shoes on the concrete for 30, 40 years, it's going to take a little bit of time to get more into more of a minimal shoe. So definitely a great strength training tool. But you want to be careful just kind of popping on a pair and going out and doing your normal route. So this is a Vibram 5 Finger. You can see it's broken up. The whole idea is, once again, to strengthen it. This is almost as minimal as it goes. I did grab the New Balance Trail 00 as well. Vibram outer sole material, definitely as minimal as it gets for a trail shoe. Typically with a minimal trail shoe is you're just going to get a little bit of an aggressive tread and then a little bit of protection from the elements.
Very cool. Well, listen, thank you so much. Wealth of knowledge. Great to get all that intel. I learned a whole bunch of stuff today too. I just sort of take for granted the shoes that I wear. I kind of throw them on and it seems to work. But there's a lot to know, and I really appreciate it. And again, this is Dan and Jazz from Front Runners Victoria. If you need a pair of shoes, come on down.